everyone, I'm Summer Bach, and this is Guts and Glory. Let's talk about crocks. So when it comes to fermenting kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, all these different things, you have to think about what kind of crock you're going to use. And there's a lot of different options out there. And I see on all of the fermentation groups on Facebook and all of the forums that this is one of the biggest questions and sometimes one of the biggest debates. So I'm just going to help clear things up for you and help those of you who haven't started to get started with something really simple. And then I'm going to show you some really cool things for those of you who have advanced your fermenting career. So first and foremost, anyone can ferment. Let's just focus on vegetables today. So anyone can ferment as long as they have a jar. Very important. This is all it takes. This is a quart-sized jar, and you don't really need anything else except maybe another jar. And the reason I have another jar is I fill this one with water or sand. Some people use sand. And you'll fill this one with the vegetables, and then you'll use this as a weight. And you set it down in here, and that becomes the weight that holds down the vegetables and keeps them under the brine. So it's really key. So this is one option. For those of you who just want to try it at home right now as soon as possible, go hit your recycling bin. All right, so it's important that this jar does fit inside of it. But then there's another option for those of you, if you have a house that maybe has mold spores, or you live in the Pacific Northwest, or you just notice that, you don't really like the flavor of kimchi or sauerkraut when mold forms on top, or maybe you have candida. If you're struggling with candida, you want to make a mold-free sauerkraut or kimchi. This is very important. So in this case, you'll use an airlock. And this is a very traditional airlock, just like what's used for brewing beer. Now there's a rubber gasket. The rubber gasket goes right on the top of the jar, and then you put this little guy down. This is basically like a little plastic lid that somebody took, and they drilled a hole in the center. They added this little like rubber washer gasket dealy, pushed the airlock down in, and then what you have to do is you have to remove this, and you pour water to the fill line. And that water prevents any kind of air from coming back into the jar, but it still allows for gases to escape. And that's really important when you're making fermented veggies, right? You want the gases to escape. So you seal that up, and what this does is it prevents mold from forming, because you don't have all of the little spores that are drifting through the atmosphere as I speak that are landing in the top. Instead, you're just gonna, after probably a few hours, the space that's left will be filled with carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide will maintain an anaerobic environment, meaning no oxygen present. And that's what is really crucial when you are making fermented veggies. You want an anaerobic environment. So this is a great option using the airlock. I love it. And then some people even go as far as getting like pickling pebbles or other sorts of weights that they can use to hold this down. I prefer, like porcelain or glazed ceramic or glass. Those are going to be my top choices. I'm not really into using rocks anymore because I've used them and I've had a lot of fails. So I don't use rocks anymore as weights. All right, so next step is in the ladder is the stoneware crock. Now this is a really small little quart-sized stoneware crock, so cute. This one is good to find a weight, like you could use this or even like this with a little espresso saucer to hold down the fermented vegetables. So that's another option. You do have the chance of mold forming in these, but they're really cute and they actually work really well for miso as well. There's also the bigger sized. So this is what, when you have these fermentation experimentations on your countertop, it's like having little chia pets. You've got these little friends you're gonna take care of, you're gonna watch. Having these little tiny crocks is great because it means that you can try new recipes regularly and you can make a small enough amount to where, everybody can run through it really quickly and you can keep trying new stuff. If you make too big of an amount, it's like, wow, we're still eating that turmeric kimchi that you made, huh? Don't want to get bored. Next up is this. This is an IKEA jar. These are really nice because it has the rubber gasket and you can actually put the fermented veggies in. You always want to leave 1 to 2 inches of space, no matter which system you're using here. And then you can actually pull this down and it's airtight. So that's a problem because gases are going to be being released. So every day you'd want to come through and burp it, right? And so it's kind of keeping some of the air from the environment out. So you're not getting a whole bunch of mold spores. But every time you open it up, yes, oxygen does come in. So you can burp it. Some people I've seen use rubber bands to kind of hold it down to where there's still some gases escaping. And some people say that the gases escape through the rubber gasket. That hasn't totally been my experience, but this IKEA one is one option. There's also the Fido jars, which are very similar. And some people just keep the Fido jars latched like that. So just a barely any air is getting in there. It's not completely anaerobic, so you'll want to make sure that you have some sort of like pickling pebbles or glass or something in there to hold the fermented veggies down under the brine. This will ensure that you have a higher yield, so not as much will go bad on top. So this is a Fido jar. It's one of my favorites. And then what's really cool is this company called Picklet. They take the Fido jar and they add a gasket right here in the top of the lid that you can put the airlock directly in, which is pretty cool. So you put your water in the airlock to the fill line, and then you have this handy dandy container. Now, what they did is they took it one step further and they give you this little like plug, essentially this little stopper that goes with it. And so all you have to do is take out the airlock, put the plug in, and then you just have your fermented veggies. This is my kimchi that I made on the blog. Delicious, delicious kimchi. And you can just put the little stopper in there, put it in the fridge, and you don't even have to transfer it. Honestly, I'm kind of in love with this system. They're a little spendy, but it's totally worth it for me because it's made it easier for me to make it. It's way less steps. All right, so then you have the Weck jars. People talk a lot about the Weck jar. This is really cool in the sense that there's these little clips that go on. There's 2 clips, there's a rubber gasket. And what I like about this, quite honestly, and the reason I think this works a little better than using a regular mason jar, is that this has straight sides. Straight sides on the crocks are really, really important. If it slopes in, or if there's any kind of shoulder, that can trap some of the organisms, and like I see more mold form when I have the shoulder on a jar. So I try to avoid that. I've also heard that people have used the Weck jars by just, setting this rubber gasket and this here so that the air is escaping. It's gonna like kind of burp out. This isn't totally sealed or pushed down. You could put these on, but I've heard of these flying off across the room. So I don't recommend putting the clips on for that. However, this is a great, great, great jar for miso. So if you think ever thinking about making miso, the straight sides of this, pretty ideal. All right, so these are some of our options. Now I'm gonna show you kind of like the fancy option. This is made after the style of the harsh crock. It's a German style crock that creates a moat. Now, first off, I'm just gonna show you this. This is made by a woman in Portland. It's gorgeous. This is porcelain. I love this. I think it's beautiful. I keep it on my counter, whether I'm using it or not. It's just like art in our kitchen. I just think it's so stunning. And so here, let me show you. So she has this little way to hold, like there's an opening here, and you just pick it up, and this is the lid, and the lid goes in here, and you fill this with water, and that creates the airlock, right? So now, as the oxygen and the carbon dioxide are escaping, oxygen will only escape at the beginning, and then it's replaced by carbon dioxide, and then carbon dioxide is the only gas escaping after that. The carbon dioxide will just bubble out. It's very, very cool. And with this, so just look down in here, it's just a normal crock, but with this, she made, pretty cool. So these are the porcelain weights, and you put these down, in the top to hold the vegetables under the brine. So there's not any vegetables just like floating up above the brine there. So I love this option. This is super fancy. There's lots of people making some really nice, artisanal crocks just like this. So just really consider, do you want the one with the airlock? That's the moat. The porcelain one that I have here has the moat. You can also get them glazed. That's fine. Make sure they're food glazed. Or you can use one without an airlock, just traditional style, which is also very effective. I've done it many, many times. So kind of choose which kind of crock you're going to use and try them out. Try out different ones. See what ends up working best for you. Like I said, I've kind of settled on the Picklet for myself. It's the 1 liter size. They make a few different sizes. And this just works for me. It's the right amount. I'm able to go through this in a timely manner to where it's not sitting in my fridge forever. And I find that I enjoy that the fact that there's no mold being produced. It means that it's just cleaner and easier to use. And then let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh, the one last thing. You can also find really large crocks, like at estate sales or thrift stores sometimes, or even antique shops. I've had ones that look like this that are 50 gallons. Huge, 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 huge. So, they do make them. Make sure it's a trusted company like Ohio Stoneware or like the Bluebird. I think the Ohio one has the Bluebird on it. And then there's Red Wing and some various other kinds of crock brands out there. So make sure that it's, one that doesn't have lead or other things like that, like, a renowned company. Also, with those, I'm always a little bit sketched out because I worry, what did somebody do with this? Like, I've seen people use those to hold cleaning supplies. I mean, I've seen people use these in their garage to hold like weed eaters and things like that. So it's like, you don't really want to be using that for food if you don't really know what happened with it. So make sure you know the story, right? So when you're buying giant stoneware crocks, learn the story, buy it from people where you're like, yes, this has been sitting in my grandmother's house since 1902. Perfect. That's the one you want to use. All right, those are my tips. I hope this helps you figure out what kind of crock you want to use. Of course, there are many different kinds out there. There's a few that we didn't cover, but these are just some of the most easily accessible ones. And I just wanted to make sure that you have this resource so that you can have fun fermenting your vegetables. All right, everyone, this is Summer Bach, and I'm signing out.